meeting after June.
Yeah, I won't be, we won't be in the construction here.
You're presenting.
Sir.
Isn't that
It's just,
nice?
we're just gonna do that, so it's step one, just.
Well, isn't it always, I mean, why would everybody?
Damn it, Vince.
We
It is
volunteer.
for stuff,
How
but
does
it's never, I mean, you have some barbed wire, I have
We're good, okay, we are. Okay, welcome to City Council meeting for Wednesday, May 28th. Welcome, Councilmember Anderson, first meeting with us. Congratulations on your appointment. We're excited to serve with you for a few months or longer. So welcome. We're gonna jump right in. 1.1 review of this evening's agenda. Any questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll do 1.2, future agenda items.
external.
I do want to talk about external ADUs. You're gonna see legislation coming anyways, in my opinion. I think
We've been saying that for like
there's-
2 years, so hopefully.
I would love to see some movement on external ADUs.
So my anticipation on that would be, we bring some general ideas and look for the council to give us some clear direction on kind of the boundaries we wanna put on them. Especially like what type of rental, long-term, short-term, do we wanna consider either one of those? You know, architecture, location, and like where they go, what size of lots, like other restrictions to like parking
Utilities.
things. Impact fees are a discussion, you're gonna do some type of fee, how they're gonna connect to the city system.
So I know we've talked about it in the sewer board about what that looks like. And for other cities, obviously, you're in that same district, so.
We'll prepare kind of an outline. If we do it in the next meeting, it won't be super detailed, but it'll be a big discussion item, I think.
We did discuss it the other day about bringing it forward.
Okay.
Okay.
I would love to see some other cities, I hate reinventing the wheel, right? If there's other cities that have good,
We've done a lot of
Farmington,
research.
seem to
Define
be.
good.
Farmington's
Farmington's-
allowing them to sell the ADU, which seems pretty
I don't know if I wanna go that far, like I said, I didn't know, but.
drastic.
Riverton has some pretty good baseline to follow.
Okay.
And we can make some improvements from there.
I think I know somebody over there that just is going through that process, so that might be good. Do you wanna excuse Mr. Holmes?
Oh, yes, and Councilmember Henderson is not here, celebrating his anniversary,
Wife's
Wife's
birthday.
wife's birthday.
But that was in
His
the
anniversary was
text.
earlier, it's all together, so we'll excuse him tonight, completely understood that. Any other future agenda items?
Yeah, 2 in a row, gotta talk about that again.
Okay, absolutely.
I know there'll be people here tonight, public comment portion. I think there was another accident even during the week this week. I don't know if it was reported, just know it happened.
It's not, yeah, it was reported. We're looking into a couple other things.
Okay. So apparently it's becoming getting quite the reputation of the road to play on and fishtail on. So something has to be done for, kids even drove by a couple of days ago, slowed up next to my daughter, so I'm laughing, pointing, yeah, see if we can do this, you know, it's like now it's a challenge.
So we met this afternoon talking about some things we can do quickly. But it would be good to have some conversation because a lot of these, the bigger solutions are quite, there's quite a financial hit to them, so we just need to talk through a couple of things.
Okay, so yeah, we can place that on so we can actually have a discussion about it.
Do we need to bring up any budget amendments or budget adjustments for FTEs and stuff, or is that?
We'll talk tonight, later.
Okay. Alright.
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay, seeing nothing else, we'll go to 1.3, council discussion of future citizen recognitions. Submissions, okay. None at this point, we'll move into our administrative reports, 2.1, solid waste RFP update. Trevor, welcome.
Thank you. Council, good evening. Bringing this back
to you folks to go over. We have essentially two issues that we wanted to touch on and get your feedback this evening. First, does the council want to continue exploring an exit from Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District? Last time I put this acronym up there, I couldn't remember it, so I practiced. Second, does the city council authorize staff to negotiate with RFP respondents? Just for some background, here are things that have transpired over the last 5-ish months related to solid waste service provision here within the city. In the January 22nd meeting, the council directed staff to explore Wolford exit, and as part of that, to prepare and issue a solid waste RFP, which we did. 21st of April, and with some discussions preceding that, the city received a proposal from Transjordan cities to buy in as a member. A few days after that, the window for the solid waste RFP closed. We received two proposals, and a preliminary review of those proposals indicated that both of them would be viable options, viable alternatives to service from Wolford. The formal evaluation process has not kicked off, but a preliminary review, as I said, indicated that we have options, essentially, is the takeaway there. Last time we were together for the city council meeting, we received direction from council to go ahead and kind of work with Transjordan towards that buy-in. And then on the 19th, this is where I ask you to please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was, Councilor Orn, that you had mentioned in some capacity to Wolford, either to the board or somehow it got to them, that we were looking to exit in a way that was more than a whisper. It was a little more solid, and that's about all I've got. Is there anything about that that you
Sure.
want to
No, we were at,
clarify?
that was our board meeting,
Okay,
and I did present that to the board and other board business at the end, that we had received back our RFPs, and they were very viable options for us, and we are interested in moving forward with exit to Wolford. We need to understand what that looks like, and so the instruction to them was to, our attorney at Wolford was gonna start looking into, understanding. They talked about even an RFP on their end to understand what it would be like to have us pull out, if it saves them money, if they lose money, or, what this financial situation will be to them. I know shortly after that, we received notice, I know Justin and I both received a notice, I assume you guys have got that, about that we'll no longer expand our green waste collection in Harriman until we kind of resolve this, because they don't wanna have to buy another truck for green waste if we're not gonna, continue with them. And I know these are all things I brought up in the meeting. I was candid the same. I just said, it doesn't make any sense to me that we can be the highest provider as far as costs, and we're a government entity, and we get the benefits of procurement, we get the benefits of no taxes, we get the benefits of no collection, all those kind of things. How can we be the highest cost service provider? And so those things are troubling to me as a board member and as a city council person, but my job foremost is to protect and watch out for the best interests of our residents. True, I sit on the board, and so my job on the board also is to watch out for the board also. But the only reason I'm on that board is because I'm a city council member for Harriman. And so those were just the comments that were shared with them. There was, I would think, a little bit of rumbling and ruffled feathers, and then some confusion on other cities, whether it's viable for them to stay, those types of things. So that's kind of where it was left.
sure. Well, thank you for
Sure.
me and all of us in on that. To kind of continue rolling with that discussion, the first thing that we're hoping to get some direction on tonight, again, is if and how to proceed with a possible exit from Wolford. And it sounds like, it's already been, it's a known quantity to them. And so, if there are further thoughts or
Do we have any obligation to them?
We will, right? There's a whole
Yeah.
legal process on how to exit a district like that. So I think I've asked Todd to look at that as well as their attorney's looking at it. It will require likely formal action from this council as well as formal action from them, us requesting to leave, them, voting to allow us to leave or whatever that looks like. So it's kind of, my thought on this is that at a future meeting, we'll bring you a resolution or something. That's the mechanism, I don't know, to ask council to say, do you want to leave, and you'll vote, we're leaving. There will have to be some time frame, both of the RFP proposers. They need time to ramp up for this. We would need time for Woodford to kind of to ramp down. So none of this would be an overnight. There has to be some lead time in a year to 18 months, something like that.
Yeah.
I think would be what we're going to see.
Yeah. Did you see any other complications that are concerning to you? I mean, obviously, they're gonna have to vote, the board is gonna have to vote to whether or not they want us to leave. But, do you anticipate any issues with that?
If they vote to allow Harriman City to leave, then we can figure out that process. If it doesn't go that way, then we will need to look at alternative, methods of getting out of the contract.
Yeah.
Depending on how we vote, how does that, can we figure out both those processes and have a discussion on those prior to their vote, so we kind of know what that looks like?
I think for, when they vote to, when Woodford votes, that will need to probably be part of that process as far as the timing, the wind down period, of it, and, but I'm not sure how that works timing wise.
It seems like though, we have to take the initial first step. It seems like we need to provide them with an official document at requesting
That
to
would be the
withdraw, right?
The resolution would do that.
I'm assuming that's a resolution or
Yeah.
something. That's
Yeah.
Just seems like, cause the board doesn't have anything to vote on until they actually get something formal from us. And so it can't even really technically be on an agenda there until they really actually receive anything. I know it's on the agenda for next month for looking into, what we'll do, but it's not on.
That's on Woodford agenda.
Yeah.
It will be, it was listed on the future agenda for next month, so.
Okay.
And I know Rachel is looking into, or the attorney is
Mhm.
looking into that stuff. I don't know if she's reached out to you at all either.
I know her, but she hasn't reached out to me on this.
Okay, anyway, so I think if that's a direction we want to move in, I think we need to come up with a resolution and get it to Woodford sooner than
We'll
later.
bring it back on formal action.
Personally, that would be what I would think.
I'm there with you, from those RFPs we saw. And the future landscape.
And again, I said this at the board meeting also, it's not about anything personal, about any person at the district or anything like that. It's just when cities grow to a certain capacity, then sometimes they outlive a special service district or things like that, so it doesn't make sense for us anymore. And any other entity in the district, they have to make those decisions for themselves. It shouldn't be we should follow these guys or we shouldn't follow these guys. It just should be financially, you look at it and see what makes most sense for your own city.
Okay, so it sounds like our next step is to prepare that resolution, bring it back to you folks, and then Teddy, are you wanting to kind of see, depending on how Woodford votes, what maybe next steps would be on our side? Is that kind of what you were?
That would be what that process could look like if it was a nay vote on them for letting us exit. Like what's our next steps and how that action works. And that could be formal or informal on just saying, hey, this is what that looks like in the next year and a half, 2 years, whatever the process is. I just like to understand that process. I don't think it's gonna change by vote.
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
but just so we can be ready for that.
And hopefully it doesn't come to that. The last thing I would think any district would want is to hold people
Unwilling
hostage.
partner.
And that's what it would be basically, so hopefully that we don't have to go down that path. We've had those discussions also, so. But
The next thing to touch on quickly here is just, to ask for your authorization or you're okay to move ahead and negotiate with our RFP respondents. There were two, ACE and Waste Management, who have responded. As I mentioned before, preliminarily, both look like viable options, alternatives to service from Wolford. Here are the criteria with which they'll be, or by which they'll be evaluated. And so, do we have any questions, anything that I can answer or maybe redirect to clarify before asking for that?
They were strong proposals, they were both.
I would also probably throw in there ramp up period, if they can both perform in the same time frame that we can exit.
And that's kind of the give and take of
Yeah.
all of it is, we gotta hear from them, how long it's gonna take to get out, so we can know.
yeah,
But yes, making that a consideration would definitely be important as we plan for the future.
and I would say I really appreciate both of them for going forward with an RFP because it is a little bit of an unknown. It's like, what is our process gonna be from withdrawing from this district? Because it's not like we can just pull the trigger on that move. So, thank you for that.
Also, if they see any, these are today's rates as well, right?
Right.
That could change in 12 months or 18 months or 2 years, whatever that looks like.
Some of it's kind of built into the RFP too, I think,
Yeah.
because it talks about, rate hikes as you go kind of stuff. But yeah, for sure, I agree.
And then will you be comparing similar packages? Cause I saw one of the RFPs had something about like recycling every other week instead of every week. And so how do you do that?
So I think we'll try and keep them as close together as we look at it, but really the intent then is we negotiate, and if there are services right now that Wasatch Front offers,
Covers, yeah.
but when we look at the numbers of users, we're 200 users out of the city's 12,000 accounts using it. It doesn't seem like it's worth everybody paying for those few to use it, so we'll try and get that as we come forward with who we think.
There was some of those discussions, obviously, in the board meeting, well, they don't offer this or they don't offer that, and exactly what I told them about, there's such a small percentage, and that means, 98% of our residents are paying or subsidizing 2 to 5% of our residents to use that service. Doesn't
Is
make
that like
sense.
glass or what are those smaller used
Christmas
services?
tree.
Christmas tree, leaf
takeaways,
collection,
one that comes to my mind,
Some of the bulk, the
Yeah.
container program.
container, well, the trailer rental, that kind of stuff, yeah, that'll get subsidized by the others, so.
So I guess I see this, we send them and the
So what we'll do is we'll bring back the resolution, you can
the
vote
resolution,
on it,
and then our next
we'll-
steps would be analyzing and then formulating the plan to move forward with timing and, right?
Yeah.
Assuming the exit's voted on, and, cause I think there's gonna be timing, we gotta make sure there's no disruption to residents.
Totally,
We
yes.
can't have it. Who's in charge of pulling the old cans in and.
And we need to understand even the cost of withdrawing too, because then it might negate some of the cost savings to go to somebody else, because I'm
True.
sure there's gonna be, they're gonna wanna. But it might be a good time, like I said, there are trucks back ordered, so it might be that they can cancel some of those orders and save that money that we normally have to be paying for and stuff, so.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work on it.
Any further questions or things that you might?
What about Transjordan? Did you guys talk to them since our last meeting at all?
So we did, we will be bringing you something back in, June for a decision if you want to
Okay,
exit.
alright.
Put that on a regular meeting so you can talk about it and decide. They would like a decision from us before June 30th, so that's why.
Okay, cool.
We, I think that Todd was still reviewing the stuff they sent us on that, so.
Okay. Any concerns yet?
it's the 400,000 we have to come up with, and over the years, the 100,000 each year, that would be the only thing I
Yeah.
have to think about, but.
How about you, Kyle? How many concerns are you for that?
Not right now. As long as we have a plan, you know, we can usually make it work. It's if they wanted it tomorrow,
Okay.
then that would be.
July 1st of
Yeah.
next year, so that's more helpful.
That is
Yeah.
nice.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate it, Trevor. Good work, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here. Okay, we'll go to 2.2 discussion on truth and taxation hearing for Harriman City, HCSEA and HCFSA. Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. It's your favorite time of the year when it's time to talk property tax rates and property taxes. Before we start, really the only thing you as a council needs to decide tonight is if you want to entertain going through the truth and taxation process. You don't necessarily need to come up with the percentage or the number right now. Just by June 1st, the county needs to know what date we are planning on having our hearings on, so they can coordinate with other entities to make sure nobody has overlapping dates. So just laying that out there first. Really, all tonight you have to decide is if you want to do a truth and taxation hearing. So first, you've heard, actually, Councilmember Anderson hasn't heard my spiel on property tax rates. I've got a new audience member tonight, which is great. The rest of the council has heard this many times, but I do first, especially if we have any residents listening online, just to go over the basics of property tax. So how property tax works in Utah is the state auditor, or excuse me, the county auditor calculates what's called a certified tax rate. And what that is, it's a rate that will generate the same amount of revenue as the entity got the prior year plus any new growth. So we get our base, and then any new businesses or homes, we do get an additional amount for those new entities. However, I always like to remind people that new amount then has to go to service the new residents. And it's also further complicated as it's usually 1.5 to 2 years in arrears. So for example, the police department's already servicing calls on these new residents and businesses, but we don't see the property tax for a couple years. So it's not like we see a windfall when we have new businesses and homes. It's great to have, but it doesn't necessarily result in a windfall for us. If we decided we want additional revenue other than what the county auditor calculates, we go through a process called truth and taxation to increase the rate. Essentially what that involves is a number of notices that both the county and our city recorder will post. Then we hold a hearing, a public hearing, to determine if the council or the board is going to raise the rate or not. First, I wanted to start with our general property tax. So that's the very smallest portion that Harriman City gets. So that does only constitute about 5% of our total revenues. I've got a chart on the next page on that. Last year, so our average home value in Harriman was $613,600. So of that, the Harriman City and then the Public Safety District for Police and the Safety District for Fire get a total of $1,765, which, and I've got a slide on the next page, so that's about 26% of their total property tax bill. And as you can see, it splits out. The general city gets about $115. The police district gets about $873, and then the fire service area gets $777. This next chart shows the total property tax bill for the average resident with a $613,600 home. As you can see, close to half of it goes to Jordan School District, and then the police, fire, and Harriman City General receives about 15, and then the rest is scattered between the other agencies, the largest of the rest being Salt Lake County at 13%, and then you see there's the others. I always like to point out the Mosquito Abatement District gets a whopping $9 of that total. And then over on the right, it does show that split of what comes to the three different districts in Harriman, so that's police, fire, and then general. and then just really more for public consumption is the police property tax is segregated from the rest and it is only used for police services, and that is their primary source of funding. Same with the fire district. We use that to fund our contract with Unified Fire and to also pursue capital projects such as building new fire stations. And then the $115 really goes into the general fund, so it's not necessarily allocated to a certain project or department, and it is a fairly small amount, but it is an important amount. It generates about $1 million a year for the general fund, for just general services the city provides.
So my favorite on this, Tara, is what the library gets compared to what Hammond City gets.
I was looking at that, yeah.
Because everybody thinks we get the whole 1765, and unfortunately,
The library gets more than the city.
yes. We probably wouldn't be having this discussion if we got the whole 1765.
Or even as much as the county.
Yes. So this next slide shows the major cities in Salt Lake County and their property tax rate. That dark line, that dark horizontal line is the average tax rate if you average out all of the cities together. As you'll see, I have split up if they have a police or a fire district, and then Salt Lake last year implemented a public safety district, and I wasn't able to ascertain if it's for both or one, so that did get separated out. And the next few slides will go into the why our rate is where it's at. It's the one highlighted in green. And then another thing, when we went through our last property tax increase for police, is there was the assumption by some of the residents that it would have been cheaper for us to stay with Unified Police. So at the bottom, I've included that SLV LESA is the taxing district for Unified Police. And you can see we've got our rate there. So there's a 43% difference between what UPD is charging versus what our tax rate is for our police. So I did also include fire on the right-hand side. UFSA was the taxing district we used to be in for the fire department. And as you can see, the rate that we currently have, so.
That's pretty staggering, 43%, on the police. It's new that we're saving a lot of money, but it's always nice to
That's just
see
on
it.
the mill rate though,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the .002 versus the .00.
It's pretty huge, huh?
So to try to answer a little bit more of the why our property tax rate is, I actually looked at what our taxable valuation is, meaning what is the base that tax rate is getting multiplied by. So this graph is actually by population, so Bluffdale is the smallest on the left-hand side going to West Valley, which is the most on the right. I left Salt Lake out just because they are such an outlier, because they have such a large commercial base and a fairly low population. It really skewed the numbers. But as you can see, we are very heavy based on residential, which I don't think, at least for the council, would be a surprise. We've got a lot of plans in place and projects moving forward to hopefully increase that commercial component. But as you can see, we have the lowest commercial value of any of these cities I looked at. There's some outliers, of course, like Draper has a number of commercial and retail and office buildings, so they have I don't want to say a low population, but compared with their assessed valuation. And then, of course, Murray, we know, has a very robust State Street and commercial areas on that. Next, I looked statewide at cities with a population of 40 to 70,000 to try to have a better gauge of who's comparable to us. And as you can see, we are on the upper end. However, that is all due to residential. Eagle Mountain is actually probably our closest city. They're a little hard to analyze because they have a lot of those data centers. However, I think a lot of those were put in with tax incentives, which most likely aren't represented in the taxable valuation numbers. But I can only pull a number for each city. I can't delve down into the detail, but you'll see They have a lot of personal property, so that's all the equipment and the other personal items that are in the businesses, which would indicate those are probably for the data centers and their larger manufacturing areas. So with that, just a little bit of discussion on just our general property tax, so that's that small $115 we get a year. So as far as my records show, we have not done a treason taxation on that since Harriman Incorporated in 1999. I've got our current tax levy there, which generates approximately $1 million a year. Right now, if you were to ask staff today what the recommendation, we would recommend increasing it by 2.89% or requesting a treason taxation with a 2.89% increase. And that is the last CPI amount for 2024, and that would generate an additional $30,800. Yeah, so not a lot of money. However, due to the way the property tax is structured, we're losing purchasing power every year because there's no inflation adjustment on it. So we had discussed previously, maybe have the discussion about increasing it by inflation, so at least we're not losing ground on that. The chart below is actually our fund balance that I did title. Just to give you some reference, what do we have in the savings account right now? So overall, as you know, you did pass a fund balance policy. We do have, if you take into account that fund balance policy in 26, we have about 2.4 million available in excess of that. However, I have alluded to this but haven't brought it back to the council. We did analyze the interfund loan we have on the Automont property, and we anticipate we're going to be about 1.7 million short next year when that loan is paid off. So my initial proposal to the council would be, let's get that shortage paid off. However, the council could decide alternative options. You could transfer that to capital projects. We could extend the interfund loan. We could do another interfund loan with another fund. We could look at other options. So I'm not suggesting that has been decided. That would just be my recommendation. So after that, there's about 700,000 of excess funds. That does not include, if the council did decide to increase the property tax, you could allocate that 30,000 to capital projects if you chose. So not huge numbers on this one. It really is to just stop losing ground due to inflation. So next is the Harriman Safety Enforcement Area, Harriman City Safety Enforcement Area. So this is our police taxing district. So it was created in tax year 2018. As many of you remember being on the HCSEA board, you did approve a tax increase for fiscal year 24, tax year 23. And you did have very specific items you wanted that to go to. So we have hired the officers outlined in that tax increase. We have also been regularly funding that vehicle replacement every year. The mental health specialists, so we still have those funds still sitting in a restricted fund for that. And then discussing a little bit further, which might be new to our new council member, you as a council had discussed previously separating our ongoing property tax money from money we get from new growth from those new houses, new businesses, with the understanding that we would hire officers as growth occurred and we met certain benchmarks that would warrant hiring those officers. And then we would need to replace that regular inflation that would occur with property tax increases. So for fiscal year 25, we had about 237,000 of costs that were increase in police budget strictly due to inflation. The direction from the council at the time was to offset that with the new growth money as a placeholder, so kind of use that as a cash flow item to fund the new growth, and then we would determine at a later date a more permanent solution to that, since that really is only temporary. And then fiscal year 26, the budget currently has about 504,000 of cost increases due to inflation. Just as a reminder, during the budget process, a couple years ago, Chief Carr, to his credit, really did slash his budget as low as he could go on that. So that's one of the reasons why that increase in 25 was so low, is because he really did, to his credit, and command staff's credit, did slash the budget as much as they could.
What are those percentages? Do we have that?
I was gonna add that too, 504,000, what percent is it?
What percent of that is?
Yeah, I don't have
Is it five?
the percentage of the total budget or what that
Yeah,
tax increase.
yeah, the percentage of total budget.
I can get that
If it's an
for you.
inflationary cost, what's the inflationary percentage, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it's similar, yeah.
I had it, I was actually looked this up today, I'm gonna see if I can see it. I think it's around 5%. So so I actually was looking at 21, 22, 23, and 24, so I didn't look at these two numbers, seeing what that type of inflation, we've been seeing about 5%. Then you have to take out the new officers, but,
Just higher than what we see as an inflationary issue.
so.
But nationally, because it's special.
Correct, you've been seeing significantly faster increases in salaries for police officers than any other position.
Thanks, Salt Lake City.
I just did some napkin calculations, it's about 5% in 26, it's lower in,
In 24.
yeah, it'd be about 2.5-ish percent.
It's-
And those are
it's a-
just really rough numbers.
Yeah, and I think you do, on one of these slides you show here, kind of what you think that percentage is to capture that back.
How big of an impact do you think that some of the discussion that Jared's been having at the UFA is gonna have on some of these inflationary pressures? Because it seems like that I think other services will start following lead of the fire service, don't you think?
So the-
Maybe scaling back a little bit on that.
So the fire service is going to use a 7-year average, actually, if we go to the very
Sorry,
end,
we
I think,
were
no,
talking
I
about-
actually put a slide in here just in case, if you go all the way to the end, Kyle, sorry, right here, okay. So this is just CIP West, this is one we use, these are the annual inflation, right, that percent, that next one is the 10-year average, and it's a rolling average, so it's actually higher than this year, a 7-year, so that's gonna be 3.61, and then a 5-year is 4.22. The reason being is we have these two really, really large years that are in there versus these really low years that are dropping off. And so I think over time, if you look at the average for 100 years over all that, the annual average is 3.27%, because I just read them. The 10-year average over 100 years is 3.03, and your 7 years is 3.1, 5 years is 3.2.
So real close to 3.
So I will say throughout my career, when somebody says, what's inflation? We always just plugged in 3%,
Yeah.
because that's about what it is. I guess I should have been doing 3.27, but, so will it impact over time? It could,
But
but if you use the annual one, they all are about the same.
Yeah, it sounds like even for 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But
Makes sense.
taking that into consideration, we're always a year or two behind. Are we playing catch up with the new growth and with
So
today's dollars buying tomorrow's equipment?
correct, so this is 2024's inflation, we're saying, okay, capture that back. We're actually talking about the 2026 budget, so we are always behind with this inflationary number. Because they don't report, we just received April's report, and here we are at the end of April. So there's always a 30 to 45-day lag. And then it's not unusual for them to adjust that number a little bit, once or twice, and then it usually stays locked in. Usually it won't change, except for the next month, it might change.
I was gonna say, definitely with fire, police, I have a little worry because of Salt Lake. You probably heard about the salary increases Salt Lake did. It doesn't sound like all the other agencies are going to follow, but you don't know if this is going to trigger another
Personnel shift.
personnel race, or as we like to call it, the race to the bottom.
And so they
So-
front loaded at essentially
Yeah.
at, what was it, it's 7, 3, and 2, so it's a 12% over 3 years. Most of the cities I've talked to are thinking, okay, that's how they're looking at it, 4, 4, and 4. So yeah, when we talk about police or any of these positions, we're always lagging a little bit because that's the number we have. So we've been trying to be very consistent. We've been using the December to December number. They will do an annual average number as well, but I think whatever one you pick, they all work out to be about the same over time.
Makes sense. Do you ever have issues with that? Cause when I do my personal interviews with all the cops I run into, they say, we just love working in Harriman.
Pay is really a dissatisfier. It's something we have to consider, but there are so many other things that go into building good culture and keeping officers here that we focus a lot on those other areas, and we don't have nearly the problems that some other agencies do.
I love that answer, cause I truly believe that. It's not, everybody's like, well, cause they pay $1 more, it's like,
It's important, but it's not the determining factor by
Exactly.
far.
And our,
Temporary motivation
Yeah,
on
that-
some stuff.
I think our challenge is you don't wanna get too far
I
behind.
agree.
And so one of the things that is also unique about our police department, well, for us, not police departments, they also are on a step plan. So their officers get raises as they have time in. But we also have a lot of long tenured officers who are already at their top. So somebody say, well, you're top heavy. Well, no, we have a lot of very experienced officers here, which is an indicator that people like to be here when we do a lot of lateral hires, so they are coming from other agencies and saying, I'd like to be in Harriman. So that's not something we can just assume will always happen, so we don't wanna get too far behind. But that is kind of unique when we look at some of those inflation factors versus other departments, because we already have a good method to move them through their ranges. Some of the other departments, we struggle a little bit more how to move people through the ranges.
Yeah, I think, no offense to Sally, but I think they do a knee jerk. It's like, this is a knee jerk reaction, and it's like, we should be looking at exactly what you're talking about, the overall department, the overall culture, why are you working here? Absolutely, we should stay up with salary, because they should be paid what they, they're never getting paid what they deserve, in my opinion, but they should be paid well, right? But I don't think we should, I think that when they did that a few years ago, everyone just panicked, and everybody did the same thing because people were hopping ship, right? But this makes sense, and we just stay calm about it, make sure we keep a good culture. One of the officers I talked to the other day is like, yeah, it was crazy to come here. He goes, where I was before, I was like a year in and everybody else had less time than I did. You know what I mean? They're just constantly having turnover, and you don't see that here as much. So we don't want to start it by not playing fair, but I don't think we should be chasing Salt Lake City.
And we've, so that's the one challenge we've had versus the way that council gave us the direction last time is not to use the new growth to cover our inflationary costs, is that we would need to do an increase on.
Makes sense.
Kyle's got a
Sorry,
great chart
Kyle.
here that tells you what that looks like.
So, our recommendation from staff would be to cover the fiscal year 25 inflation, so that 237,000. And then adjust 26 by, the 2.89, that 24 CPI. So that won't cover all of the inflation, but the hope is over time, we would be able to get that, zeroed out, but, oh, sorry, go.
No, I was just curious what that means on an average household. If it was 613,000, what would that typically be on the average household, do you know?
I'd have to calculate that, but that's pretty easy to calculate.
Just because people just wanna know how it affects them,
Yeah.
right?
So it was what, 880 some dollars, and then so another 5% of that, right?
Right.
Is that an assessed value, or they're paying on it after the 45% discount?
Yes,
Okay. it just, I mean, just those
We
kind
can,
of.
we can run that number.
Yep, that's the biggest thing, since people are like 5%, but it might be $5, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They need to understand what 5% means. I mean, it's more than $5.
Then moving to the fire service area, so it was established for fiscal year 23 or tax year 22. So as we've discussed, we are using it as a savings account to save up, mainly for the rebuild of Station 103, but also for future fire stations we'll need. We haven't updated the long-range model in a few months, but but funding was currently sufficient to cover us until we build a brand new station, not a rebuild, but a brand new station. By the time you add the operating costs with that, that's when we started dipping into negative territory and we would need a tax increase to fund the operations of that station. So the staff recommendation here is Unified Fire increased our assessment by $174,766. I knew that percentage. Councilmember Henderson isn't here to remind me. But when you look at our tax bill, it would be about a 2.09% increase if
I
we were
think it's
just to.
2.97, something like that, and because of the way the tax rate, it's actually, we don't need 3%, we need 2.09 to match that.
But as you can see below is the fund balance number, so we expect by the end of 26 to have about 5 million in the account. About half of the station will have been paid for by then, and then expecting the rest of the construction to happen in 27.
It's $1.30 a month.
So we're still talking about $5 between the two, and 20 cents for the city.
Mine,
Just kidding,
yeah, I was gonna say,
$2.
yeah, look at mine is $4.
Yeah.
If we
So on
take,
my,
just if we take staff
for
recommendation.
police, it'd be $2 for me a month.
A year, right?
No, 24 a year.
It's $4 a month for all four, all three.
All three.
Okay.
$4 a month for the
Sorry.
three combined. I'm just saying, not that we've agreed on that.
No,
just
I
saying
know, yeah,
that's-
just put it in perspective.
But I'll calculate the hard numbers and then, so moving forward, tonight is just deciding if we want to move forward with truth and taxation. The next meeting is when the council and the boards will need to adopt a resolution or ordinance specifying that they're either going to accept the certified tax rate or they're going to request additional funds through truth and taxation. So that'll be next council meeting. I did put just a summary of the recommendations up here. So for the general, it's increasing by 2024 CPI. HCC was a 5.36% tax increase, which would be the 2024 CPI for 26, and then the amount we would need to cover the 25 inflation. And then HCFSA would be to increase the rate by the amount our contract with Unified Fire increases.
So you just need a head nod from us.
I think we've talked about doing this every year moving forward, even if I think that's.
And once again, at the hearing, you can decide we don't wanna raise our tax, we don't wanna raise the tax rate.
This is really setting, when
yeah,
you make that decision, it's setting a cap.
Yeah, it sets a cap, so we can't go above that, but you can certainly, as we did with the police last time, you can
Adjust it.
adopt an amount lower.
Like I said, I like the practice of doing it every year. I've heard a lot of cities are doing that, just it's, whether we do it or not.
I think it's good philosophy to have incremental increases rather than a large one. Because I think if we push police or fire off for another 2 years or even another year, you're that much farther behind, and then the 5% now or the 2% now is gonna be 15 or 10 or 15, it just compounds so quickly. But that's if we decide to raise it. I think we give that option, and I don't know if it's not policy, but I think it'd be great philosophy to look at it every year. You do the truth of taxation, see if it's absolutely necessary, get consumer citizen feedback, and move forward from there.
Agree.
Thank you.
Hard topic, but
Thanks, Pat.
yeah,
Good job.
thank you. Okay. 2.3, discussion of a city council policy regarding city sponsorships and donations. Wendy?
Just the draft and the file so we can all look at it together. This was actually really difficult to write because most of the time, most of the policies that I've found surrounding city sponsorships and donations are the opposite direction. It's how a city accepts donations to the city, not the city donating things. So I don't think that this is very common in municipalities. But this is something that the council had asked to come back. So I got the policy written and tonight I just kind of wanted to go through it and see what feedback you all had. We have the draft on the screen here, open to any discussion or questions that you have. There are some questions that Nathan and I had as we kind of went through and reviewed this draft together, and we can go through those too. Any overarching questions or concerns that you all had with it as it's drafted?
My biggest concern was, sorry, should I go? Oops, when do you ever ask? Just, it's a little bit vague on, it's like, and then we'll decide whether we approve you or not. What's the deciding factor? You know what I mean? It's like, who's gonna come in and complain and say you decided to do that for them and you didn't decide that for me, why? And is that gonna put a lot of extra stress on staff because you're gonna have to be the one saying yes or no? And then those people are gonna come and say, well, these people said we could do it and why, how come they did, you know, what's saying you're not discriminating against this person versus that person, do you know what I mean? That was my only concern, I was like, it's a lot of burden placed on you guys to have to deal with that too.
Anything else?
So, along that line, but even what we did a couple weeks ago of awarding our annual monies out, right? What criteria, I mean, that's just personal criteria of like, we think this will be best for this, right? So maybe some structure around that, metrics or what that might look like, but also, did we just, when we donated money, we just, no policy, we just decided to do it in the past?
Well, it came to council.
Right.
So for
yeah.
like the Warriors is a good
Yeah.
example, right? We brought it to council and council decided to allocate those funds.
And then will this still stay ledge approval
So-
or admin approval?
Under support of external organizations, I believe that's a city council decision. There's a different, so if you look at it, the sponsorship, that's more of a money driven issue because you're either using financial resources or staff resources or city resources. Whether it's just promoting it on social media, that takes our communication staff time to do that, to make a decision based on that. And they've really pulled back quite a bit on that. In sharing community information. That's why we have our events calendar that they can go enter things into.
Is that I'll question, is that an open RSS feed or is that something that
We approve all of them.
you approve it, all the applications? So like say the high schools could drop their whole feed in there or no? You'd have to approve each of it?
They fill out a form, we look at the form, approve it, post it.
The bottom section, that B section, I think is the one.
Donation collection.
Yeah. That's the one that the events above are considering. But I think it always comes back to the council.
That's the only thing, like that one says, these requests will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis and approved or denied by the city manager, but what would be the basis of approval or denial, do you know what I'm saying?
So,
It's just so hard because
So
you don't
these are
wanna be
ones where I-
complex.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's a community investment
Yeah.
thing, it's a community engagement thing, and so I really struggled with, well, that's kind of silly that we can't put an angel tree in the lobby, I mean, that,
yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Or
So
the
I really
donation
struggled
box or
with
the-
writing this,
yeah.
yes,
yeah,
yeah, I
like
think
the
what,
little flag collection box out there with,
Yeah.
who cares?
so the issue becomes when you get too many of them, so
Exactly.
you're like, oh, okay, we're gonna have to draw a line. And well, this really came up, part of what pushed this was several of our crossing guards put the pinwheels out there that are
Yeah,
domestic
so they're-
violence awareness. And there was a question, should the city be sponsoring that without the council approving it? So we were trying to we get those requests and those kind of things, regularly, and those pinwheels have been up in every city I've worked in 20 plus years since they've been doing it.
I think the confusion came in when it had Harriman City on the actual poster boards out front.
I don't know what it
That
said
was
on
part of the discussion,
Yeah.
but I don't know if the logo wouldn't have been on there, I think it still would have been.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it still would have been
Concern.
brought to attention, but yeah, I think that was the,
Yeah, but no, I know exactly what you're saying, but then it's like, but don't we wanna, this is a community building paid for by the community, so we wanna allow them to use it to an extent?
a lot of their calls are that very issue, right? Domestic violence, which is why we were like, how do we not support that? So it became this issue, so Wendy and I went back and, cause I really don't wanna be in the position of saying, oh yeah, you're good, you're not.
Exactly.
I think
We kinda do it ad hoc now, like when we look, is it city related? And we would support it. If it's not city related, we'd encourage them to try other things, but we do get a lot of requests for donation boxes downstairs. And so, as a city, we have sponsored, or the officers have sponsored, I think there's like a coat drive or something. We have participated as an entity,
Yeah.
or the youth council will do it, but they're part of us, so that's fine.
Friends of Harriman did one down there the other day.
Right, so there's, where it starts to get is somebody say, well, could we do this there? If there's nothing there, it's probably not a big deal, but it could be, right? If you get 10 people all wanting a donation box at the same time, we don't
like a
really
food drive.
want to be that.
Could there be some framework around that, like timing, 30 days max, pickup, drop off, maintenance, whatever that looks like? Just something.
And we
With the
loosely
Yeah,
done
We
that.
we
Yeah.
do that with the individuals when they come in, it's.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, you don't want a policy that has to dictate everything, huh, but it's important to have.
Yeah, some
Because they have to
framework.
come empty it on a regular basis
Yeah.
and so it's.
With contact information or whoever, cause I think you might enter into some First Amendment stuff, right? Really quickly.
Yeah, again, stuff that we choose to sponsor right now, when we allow them down there, it's because we're sponsoring. Yes, or they're part of us. We really haven't had many third parties. We have the Girl Scouts flag, but it's for flags, right? It's it's not other things.
Flag
It's just, if you
donations,
want to
period.
retire a flag, you can put it in there and they'll take care of that. When we do the food drives or those kind of things, those have typically been championed by a department or something in the city that's trying to do that, or we're, as employees, we're trying to do that. So I view those a little differently, because I do get concerned about creating public forums that I have to let anybody do, even the calendar. I'm concerned that anybody can put anything on that calendar. If we allow one and not the other, are we in trouble? Should we just
That was
limit
my
it to
concern with the
government,
policy.
other governmental agencies
Don't want
that
it
are
on
doing
your
it?
guys' shoulders.
I think part of this policy is to provide us the staff information on to help make a recommendation. I'm guessing if there's a question on whether it fits a city function or community purpose, that sort of thing, would err on the side of bringing it to council. But before we can do that, we need to be able to answer a lot of these questions that are put forth in the policy.
No, I think good stab at it, for sure. I was just, my only concern was like, there's nothing that really, why did you choose them and not them kind of thing, and I just don't want it to be dumped back on you
Yeah, I
guys,
didn't.
for people to say,
I would love this part, but I also don't wanna get us bogged down with having to bring, cause we get a lot of requests, especially
And so do
people,
you. Yeah.
people will look at, oh, it costs so much to rent the pavilion, why don't you just sponsor it and give us the pavilion for free? And right now, the direction has been, we just charge the fees, and so would be we would turn it down, no, it's not a city function that we're doing that night, then it's a private group, and you're welcome to use it, but you would pay. It is difficult. When they ask you for money on that top part, I think it's real, having had one of these policies before, it's really hard for that council to sit there with people, they're good proposals. Yes, this would be a great
Good
thing to
purpose.
do, and you're sitting there thinking, we don't have the money. Kind of on a small, it's like when you've had to review the scholarship applications. You're like, well, we have one extra, can we find the money, cause these are all good kids.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
$500.
When you're talking $500, it's one thing, when it's
Yeah.
like, hey, we want 50,000, and you're put in a position of having to decide which is the best good for the community, and I think that's hard for councils to do. Typically with these, you're gonna want that all at one time,
In the
big
year,
money,
yeah.
so that it's part of your budget, so you can lay it out. For these other small ones, we do put some money in to help sponsor and to do things like that.
Sometimes it's like the Night of Heroes tables,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah, that
chamber tables, or the golf tournaments, or those, and they're included in the budget already.
What happens if we just shut the door?
Well, then you don't offer even the community aspect that you were talking about, like the angel tree or something. It's like, sorry, no angel trees here.
But I think there's enough public space or even private space where those could happen.
The hard thing is though, people look at, this is public space.
True.
You know what I mean? That's, if I'm looking at this and I'm coming here, I'm gonna say, this is public space. What
It's
are
the
you talking
people's,
about?
yeah.
So,
It's the peop- You know what I mean?
I think a lot of times that angel tree, most of those are probably taken by city employees. They go down there and, oh, we'll do this one.
Yeah.
So there's some internal community within the city
Agreed.
staff itself to have that.
And I-
These are these tough ones when we try to do a policy. And ultimately, I think that the demand for the policy came, it's really tied to when does the council want to support things versus others, whether you do resolutions or just support them. So we're trying to draft a policy that brings stuff to you, but then there's other things, can we just do them? Like, do we wanna sponsor a table at the Night of Heroes? Well, it's one of the chambers who covers our area and they recognize first responders, and so typically we have. We say, yeah, we'll sponsor a table. It's not a huge amount of money and it's going to a cause that frankly, some of our employees being recognized. So
Yeah.
we think there's value there. It gets, we've had requests from the school districts to sponsor some things, and so we might buy a table at something they're doing. Again, there's students in our area, so we make those judgments. But right now, a lot of those are happening at that, like, department head level. Right? If they have the money and they think it's important, they might do that.
And sorry,
It's not even coming to me.
how often? Like, how often do you get requests like that?
A lot,
Yeah, for the sponsorships to waive bees,
it's a lot.
all the time.
Okay.
And we have a memorandum of understanding with Friends of Harriman, so that's included in their memorandum of understanding. But we get, even for block parties, or how many events, special event permits do we get asked for free police or fire, or
Every time.
it's,
Or the Yeti.
it's a lot, or the Yeti to show up, which we don't do.
Could we just do an internal policy with the directors, and if it's in their budget, it's in their budget? And
But
there's,
what if it's something the council doesn't want to support?
They would need their own metrics of criteria too.
I know.
How do you feel about this policy?
It was really a struggle for me, but especially because I love the community engagement, and I feel like it's really important. And I feel like it's one of the things that really sets Harriman apart from other cities, is that we welcome the community to do these types of things,
But we
So-
haven't had those events that we had events we don't welcome and support in our city, but we didn't have, they didn't ask, they just show up and do.
Yeah.
So I wonder,
And we've had groups that have shown up and then agreed to some stuff, said one thing and then not paid
Or
when it came to
brought
it.
20,000 people.
Yeah, so the one thing I thought is when Wendy, she got this done and she gave it to me, I'm reading it, I'm like, I'm not even sure how to do this realistically, because I think there are so many nuances to how we interact with the community and what they request, what council, what may be happening in the community, to write a policy that covers it all perfectly. There's always gonna have to be some sort of discretion to read it and say, well, can we do this? And the request for, hey, we wanna use the pavilion for free,
That one's a little,
right now, we've just said no.
that one's an
Everybody's
easy
That's an easy one.
Right, and that's kinda simple. Can we put a box downstairs for a food drive? Well, yeah, we'll see how much we can raise as as an employee group and citizens coming in, we cheat.
I mean, but then it works, I mean, blood drives and all, I mean,
We do blood
Blood
drives,
drives,
right? As
I
in
know.
the city staff, we have
That's-
sponsored blood drives.
we do vaccination, we do.
Yeah, we do a lot of things.
the health wagons, the book, we don't book.
We can't shut this down.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So
Shut it
it-
down.
Do you think, my concern was that I was just worried about you guys more than anything, but it just seemed like it was a lot of, but I guess the pressure's already there. It just felt like it was like, what if you say yes and to them and no to them, and what's the criteria and how come everybody's mad? I mean,
Yeah.
please all the people.
Can we sit on this for a while?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it needs a stew.
I mean, I think we're gonna talk in circles tonight about it. I don't think we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, it is rough.
One question, so it sounds like it also takes up time because it's continual. Like, would it help at all to have like 2 open periods a year where you just, you have to think ahead and they all come in and you can evaluate them all at the same time and maybe plan something out, like these
Like we
boxes?
do with the grant,
Is
where
that,
we do it one time a year.
is that what you do?
Yeah, for the grants.
There are, and there are spontaneous requests that come up that they decide they're gonna do their block party and they want support from the city for that, either to barricades or whatever, and we wanna that's great, you're doing a community block party in your street, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
we've even talked about creating like a
The block.
block party trailer, right, that we would let people check out, right? It might have the barricades and all that and there's an inventory, they can check it out, they can go do it and they have to return it. To support that without being a burden on city
cumbersome.
staff, right? It would be kind of a first come, first serve, or whoever reserved it first would get it, but. So we've been thinking, how do you encourage, cause you want to encourage neighborhoods to talk to
engage.
one another.
Yeah, it
And-
creates less work for him.
Yeah, and so, that part
we
I think
don't-
we can come up with.
We don't always wanna be the creator of the events for the
No.
community, right?
But
We
less
want
we
others
are the
to do-
best.
Yes.
So this was hard, this was really hard.
bet.
Like I said, when I read it, I was like, okay, I really don't wanna be picking, but I don't,
And how do you do a policy like this?
yeah, I don't know, and I think the request was, I think you could do some just blanket, hey, we don't waive fees in parks, right? That we set
Yeah,
those
that could
fees
be
based on the
policy,
cost of using the park. We don't charge ourselves that, cause if we charge ourselves, then we just have to go get it from the taxpayers and pay
Right.
ourselves back.
What is it better to not have a policy, in your opinion, on something like this and have it more ambiguous and per request? Or we have a quarterly or biannual event time to say, okay, bring your event to us, we'll have it approved in X amount of days or disapproved or allowed.
Clear policies are always best, but drafting something like this is gonna be challenging. Cause there's gonna be so many, like Nathan and Wendy said, nuances in each request that comes forward. But yeah, I would recommend having a policy that gives staff guidance on what the council would like to see. Even if that means that there's some discretion for staff to make those decisions.
Just, I think, shorter and, cause if you have policy, you wanna follow it.
Yes.
That's where you
You'll
get
get
in trouble.
in more trouble
There's
if you
always
don't.
those heartstrings.
Yeah, could you put a little criteria?
I don't have
maybe
heartstrings, you can send them to me.
Maybe what you were saying, even like, we don't, some of the criteria is we never waive fee on this, or, just a few things that are just some high level
Some basic,
criteria
yeah.
that are the basics, so when people come in, you say, sorry, that's our policy, we don't ever do that part. But then you can have some discretion in the other stuff.
Everything else is at your
Yeah,
discretion.
cause I know when I first got here, this is before Todd was here, but there was a request, can we our group wants to put banners up in your city,
Yeah.
that was like, no, those should be city banners, because you're going to get into a First Amendment thing, and so we said, no, we'll just keep it to city.
Plus the resources to do that are extraordinary.
So we've done something like that where we just said, here's some hard, fast rules, we probably,
Is the hard, fast rules you can put in there so that at least it looks like you're not, you're not picking on those people by saying that. It's like, this is part of our policy, these are hard, fast rules, and we don't budge from these, but then have the discretion on other stuff.
Can we label the 10 Commandments of
That's
best?
perfect.
I don't know, good job, I was thinking that same thing, I'm like, this is a hard one to write.
Well, it's gonna
So
take
if
up a
you-
lot of your time to evaluate it, so, I mean, if there were some, at least, like hard and fast exclusions, then people would know maybe not to even ask, and.
Yeah, sometimes they're very easy to make it as, for me to make this decision and say, oh, that's not a big deal, like, that's not gonna, but I thought the pinwheels weren't a big deal, and apparently they
Do they
weren't. So-
mostly come to you, Lynn? Do they come to you
They'll
on
come,
this
a
or
lot of times
events?
they'll come through events, a lot of times they'll come directly to me, just because I've either worked with them in the past or
Yeah.
one of you
It's
appointed them
coming, it's
to
coming
me.
up through, it's
Yeah.
coming up through parks or events,
Okay.
yeah, that kinda, it's, cause Wendy's over those
Yeah.
facilities, that's where they end up.
Or we call her, like, who do we talk to? Oh, I'll take care of it.
That's my AI response to all texts, call Wendy.
We call
They,
her.
they come in
You're auto
too.
responsible.
My auto response.
They come through Shelley sometimes, people
Yeah.
will say, can we do this, and so,
Okay.
maybe we just rework this and say, here's the things we don't do,
Yeah, okay,
And then everything else is, yeah.
and everything else is discretion
Yeah.
of the city manager or their designee, and then you're smart enough to know whether you should bring it to council.
And we could tweak this as things come back and become issues, I think we can tweak it as it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just didn't want you guys to have an extra layer of stuff that you have to worry about.
Or if you say yes to something, then
And
we get,
notice.
then we get blown up, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
So-
Yeah,
so
then
this
that way
is
if you
not-
bring the hard, fast rules and we say, yeah, and then you come back and say, or you
Told
do
you
that,
so.
hey, it's not on the hard, fast
That's
rules,
right.
here's my discretion.
Well, you know, the
Pinwheels is not listed.
classic example, we rent our parks to groups. We have to, if we rent to one group, we rent to all groups. Right, and even if you don't like their message, you still, it's a public thing that you've done, which is why you don't want to open up your banners, we may not want to open up our calendar, right?
Yeah.
Those are things that
Yeah.
you could end up having something on there that you don't like, but if you've opened it up, it's American, you gotta say, okay, I don't like it, but they get the right to do it.
Right, yeah, for sure.
do you have any interest in a policy about receiving sponsorships or donations? And this comes up because I've been approached by Friends of Harriman, for example, about them donating a piano or sponsorship names on trails or those kind of, and we've been able to kind of put that to the side for now, but I think that's gonna be something that will
I don't
be
think we
coming
put
back.
any names on anything, but
Okay.
physical donations or monetary donations to Friends of Harriman, are they donating to friends
They
or
wanna
donating to us?
No, they wanna donate to Friends of Harriman to
Oh,
name it, to sponsor a trail, sorry, not
Okay.
name a trail,
But like the
sponsor a trail.
piano, like who does the piano go to? To the city or to them?
They
I don't-
wanted it to be
Come to
the
the
city's
city.
piano.
I don't want,
So those
Yeah.
are the kind of
okay,
things that have been mentioned in the
Okay.
past couple of years, and even before they were Friends of Harriman, the Arts Council
Yep.
wanted to donate it.
But then we're getting ready to do some lights with them, they're donating
Uh-huh.
to the lights.
Yeah.
To do some lights and the trail, so that's
lights where,
That Butterfield.
Butterfield, like, they raised some money to put in some new lights.
see, but that,
But this is companies donating to Friends of Harriman to sponsor a
To
trail
provide a service.
with
Yeah,
the
that I
name
don't
on it.
want, yeah,
Okay.
I'm just saying, that's what I'm trying to, what's the
Well,
difference
if-
taking a piano
well, hold on.
versus putting lights at Butterfield Park, is there a difference?
Yes.
Well, right now, we have lights and we
Yeah.
maintain
Yeah.
the
There is,
piano,
but what
we
is it,
don't
how do you put,
maintain.
I'm just saying, how do you put that into policy?
we don't have a space for a piano or storage or, but so like if this is where I take my set back, if they wanna put a name on a trail for a specific event for a specific time, possibly, right? If they're doing a trail cleanup and it's sponsored by XYZ company
Oh, yeah.
and they're
absolutely.
cleaning up that trail and the
It's a
signage is there,
temporary sign,
that's all, I'm all for that,
temporary
Yeah.
signage.
yeah.
But not naming.
But
it
not naming
sponsor.
X trail for, yeah.
No, the Delta Center does it, you
Delta
know.
Center, and then it was whatever it was
Well, we've
for a
talked
while.
about
It's been the
Delta
Delta
Center.
Center for the last 4
We
years.
talked about doing a sponsorship for the council chamber,
Right.
right?
It can have its own name, we can name this the council chambers, yeah, that would be.
I think we have a naming contest.
Okay, so are you interested in
Target
something
council
like that
chambers
or
at
not right now?
City Hall.
We might need to discuss it
Are
more.
you interested in that? Do you feel like we need that? Are you getting enough requests that you think it's becoming troublesome?
No, I think it's just something Friends of Harriman is trying to do to raise funds, to help support
Yeah,
what
I
they're
think,
trying to do.
I think as a general, we just push back and say, no, you can't donate enough money to name a trail after you. It's not the bricks on the sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a huge.
I've seen these with like,
Fire station.
people wanna donate a bench and they wanna put a memorial plaque
Yeah,
on
we
the
have
bench.
had
Do you
those
have
requests for a
rules-
tree.
Yeah.
rules on how you deal with the tree or the bench and if it gets damaged, you know, paying for, right? There's some, I've seen those, we can probably find some policies that are specific to if you're making a donation, a specific bequest to the city. Naming of parks and trails, that tends to be, I'm sure there are lots of policies, I've written several in my career about that. Thing I remember the most is you can't name it after a living person because it was an issue
Yep.
in a certain place. And so sometimes you do that. Frankly, there we ended up, you needed to name it after like a physical thing in the area and not about a person because people's names is somebody doesn't like them. And then you have some comment for 6 months about why you named it that. So I think there's just challenges. We could probably find
Yeah,
something
there's lots of
simple.
those kind of policies around.
Everything in government is like that. This is a great idea, except for blah, 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 blah.
They can give us money anytime they want though.
So sounds like you're gonna sit on this one, maybe we'll rework some stuff and come back with maybe something just
The things we don't
much
do.
simpler.
It just seems like, and then that way it's less pressure on you guys. Here's the stuff that we don't do. And then if council's upset and says, hey, you did this, well, you didn't put it on your don't do list, and you left it up to us to be discretionary to with this, so this is how we moved forward, so that's what I would think.
Clear as mud?
No, got it.
We have time to-
Last
do this
one,
real fast?
I think we can.
Okay, 2.4, council board and committee assignments.
So normally we do this in January, but with Councilor Shields leaving and Councilor Anderson coming on board, we have some vacancies. The eye chart that is attached, sorry, it's pretty small, but really we have vacancies in the Association of Municipal Councils. Councilor Shields was serving on that. He was serving on the South Salt Lake Mosquito Abatement District.
Can you do that, Tara? It's a super fun board. It's great. I'm super sad. I'd be like, yep, put me back on that, but it would not be right. But it's really, is it still on?
They
Yeah, what are
meet
the days? Yeah.
monthly, the second Monday, and I don't know, it's 7:30, or it's 2.
And I will say, do not feel pressure. Like, you tell us what your bandwidth.
Don't say that. Feel pressure.
I looked at the chart, I can do that one.
Okay, and then there's the Utah League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee. So we have, the mayor's a voting member because he's on the board of ULCT. And then we have Councilor Orn, Councilor Hodges, we have Councilor Shields. So there is one more vacancy there if you want a voting, it could be council, it could be staff.
Is there conflict between you
No,
and?
I asked, and I have a coworker who is on Highland City Council and a voting member of LPC,
Okay.
so it's fine.
Oh, if you're already gonna be there.
Yeah.
You know how fun those meetings can be?
Yeah.
Or not. Regional Growth Committee, this is it's like just like a
And Steve was just
liaison.
asked to be on there, cause he was on there.
Okay, cause you're on.
We can't just, right,
Is that WRC?
and Steve was on there, yes, it's under, we can't just put Tara on there, so
Correct.
we would have to.
So he was just on there, but
Steve had been on there before I was, and then when the whole transition from a different mayor to
it's typically the
they wanted
mayor's.
mayors on there, but because Steve had been on there, they didn't wanna, so they let him stay on, cause he was, so.
And then there are vacancies in the audit committee. These are internal boards. So the audit committee, which is an absolute blast. Kyle hosts an awesome audit committee meeting.
They bring cookies
once a year.
What?
No cookies,
No cookies.
just
We're getting shot.
books.
whatever's in the tree.
They are very thick.
And then the traffic and transportation, we would like to have a little bit of a conversation about this, cause it was originally an engineering-based thing. And then they asked to have a counselor on there. Do you still wanna have a counselor on there? Do you wanna leave it with staff bringing recommendations back to the council on items? Cause we're talking often like sight lines and things like that.
Kind of it's kind of a technical group, police, planning, engineering, public works, looking at the issue. Sometimes a political person might push a little influence one way or the other.
Good or bad?
And can be more.
Right, it can
Sometimes
be-
it's good, sometimes the, don't get the full technical analysis, it jumps on occasion. So
It's up to you all.
it was modeled after the traffic committee that was set up in South Jordan when I talked to their city engineer back when I first started here. And he was like adamant against having, council members on his because he wanted to bring it to the elected body as here's a technical recommendation from the group. So, but either way, we're open either way, it's just,
How did it start?
I was bad at making decisions. So I wanted more people to be to blame instead of just me.
Is there any reason like being a fly on the wall there without any input and just absorbing? Is there any, I mean, I guess we can always sit in a meeting anytime we want, but, I don't know if we,
See, I would say this, I think with the council member on there, I think we almost felt like their job was to kind of report back to us sometimes, and that's.
but that's
that
not what happened.
doesn't happen.
And that
We're
didn't
not-
happen with our other
we're
task
not
force a lot of the time.
Good about it,
Yeah.
none of us are, right?
Yeah,
That's not
yeah.
that's not a bash on Steve at all.
No,
That
it's
was-
any.
We're not always great about that, we always say we should be better, and none of us.
But even with the school thing, it's like, we get the information, we're like, okay, there's nothing new to report, or there's nothing really substantial out of there.
Right.
That,
And most issues are like, hey, I need no outlet sign on my cul-de-sac because people come up here and turn around. So the committee looks at it and sees if it makes sense. Do you really need a council member spending an hour in a meeting for that?
No.
No, and I think that when we send you requests, cause I've sent you things before and you're like, that'll have to go to traffic committee, it's just an expectation that then we get feedback after the request is sent, here's what it is.
And the big items, council is involved in.
Yeah,
I don't think we need a council member.
So the only one I didn't get a note on was the Association of Municipal Councils. So they meet
like,
every even month. Right now they're meeting in Murray. We've hosted them here when Steve was president of that group. And in the excluding December, because in December, I think they meet with.
They come to COG.
COG.
what time did you meet?
It's a
It's a new.
lunch meeting, it's noon to 1:30.
What is your bandwidth to work?
Well, I will be out of town on the first one that's coming up, June 26th. I mean, that's something I could do. I don't really know anything about this group, but I mean, I'd be interested, but I don't know.
It's
The other-
kind of a council side to answer to the committee of mayors, really. I think they talk about council related.
I was thinking of this, cause Sherry, we still never really, we're able to give Sherry more when she lost the water. I'd like to talk to Tara about the youth council. Maybe having a second one, cause Sherry's expressed desire to have a second person on there now to handle. So I don't know how you feel about meeting with the youth council, Tara, and then maybe have Sherry take this Association of Municipal Councils.
for the 4
But keep
months or
the
6
youth
months.
council, like also.
Yeah, you also keep the youth council, but, cause that's the middle of the day, I know that might be, again, I'm trying to be sensitive to bandwidths and
What
Sherry.
days are they meet?
Third Thursday of the even months.
And and like I said, I'm not trying to push one either way, I'm trying to add in another one that could be busy with youth council.
I'm good on Thursdays, I can do that.
What do you think
June
about that?
26th.
Are you okay with that though?
August 21st.
It's June 26th, then August 20, yeah, they're on
August
this,
21st.
they are on this chart.
And then October 16th.
We can have Shelley add it to your calendar.
Then the December meeting with COG.
Are you okay
Yeah,
with
you'll
youth
just have
council?
Shelley send those invites.
Yes, that'd be great.
And now that my calendar is now updated to the new website, I'm can actually, it was not actually populating my calendar, I was missing meetings and going, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it was doing it with mine, so she could see it on hers and not on mine, then you'd pull up another one, it would be on mine, but it wasn't showing up on my phone or anything. So I think we got ours worked out. It was around the same time you were having it. It was
I'm like, oh no, why did I
Some-
miss that
some
meeting? Nobody
update.
told me about that.
it was an update.
How does that work with scheduling, like with mosquito abatement? Like, do I just put it on my own calendar like you said, or does my name get sent to
You can, we
them?
can, we will let them know and they
Okay.
should invite you. And then Shelley will also make sure that we can have her
We
make
do
sure
have
it's
to
okay.
approve a resolution, we would do that at the next meeting, I would inform the chair that appointment has been made.
So we just do all these formally next meeting.
I think that's the only one
It's the
that
only
we
one that
need,
requires
that requires
an actual
resolution.
So go on consent next meeting.
if that's where you would like it,
Does
I would love it
does
then.
LPC require anything formal or do we just have to tell them?
You just need to let them know.
Just advise them. So we can start telling them now.
Do you wanna talk about youth council,
Uh,
how we're gonna move it forward, or is that a discussion for another day?
probably another, right now, we're going to tag team youth council for a little bit until we figure out the dust settles.
Is Angie still doing that, or?
She's
I
doing,
know
she's
she
doing
sent out
the,
a piece of party for the end of the thing, right?
yeah, she was doing the
So-
the notifications all along, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, so right now we planned
party,
an end of
love it.
the year party. It's Monday. I don't know if you got the invite.
I did.
Monday from 4 to 6 in the community room.
Okay, no, that's good, so,
And then we just got applications for next year. That's just closed.
okay, so then I need to go through those and.
I believe there's 31 applications.
Okay.
Then how many, is that new applications or they, every year they have to
They
apply?
have to reapply
Yeah,
every
they
Okay,
would have to.
okay.
I believe there was 18 that were on the youth council this year from a rough
Okay.
looking at it.
Last year was 50, but,
Yeah.
but,
That was a
that
lot.
They
that
kinda
was,
washed out. after a
yeah,
while.
so many of them didn't participate, so 31 is fine.
That's a good number.
It's good. So no, that's good, okay, I'll grab those from you, like, I'll grab them from you on Monday.
What does their term look like real quick? Like, are they
They're
12
year
months?
to year.
So,
Year to
but from June,
Ju-
July
July.
1st,
Okay.
July.
To the end of June.
And then usually the incoming ones, we ask them to help in town days.
Yep.
So we need to try and get them interviewed before that so that we can have them help in town days.
do we ever deny application?
No, never,
Okay. I
But-
just wondering.
but it's good to go through a formal process
Yeah.
for them. It teaches them how to do the
Exactly.
interview.
So you and Tara do the interviews maybe?
Well, if she's gonna, I think Counselor Anderson's gonna be gone in June.
Yeah.
So, one of us can help.
Yeah. Just kidding.
So,
No, it's good. Okay, yeah, we'll just have her through 'em. I'll just try and get those done within the next couple of weeks so that they can help in town days if they want.
a lot of moving pieces with that, with Destiny, our long-term staff member who worked it, having left, so.
A really long termer.
21 years or something?
I'm like filling the gap. It's like, what is going on, Dad? You left the canyon here.
So will I get added to the youth council notifications, or is that just automatically on all the
We'll do that.
calendars?
No,
We'll get you added.
Are you good with that? We usually meet the second Thursday of every month at 4:00.
My schedule is really flexible, I can do pretty much anything, but advance notice is really helpful.
Okay, cool.
I'll make sure it gets on you.
Okay, look for a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I just remember, well, you know,